I always thought size mattered. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. So about a week or so ago, we went ahead and picked ourselves up this super nice, at least in the Lost Cause world, L405 5-liter V8 supercharged Range Rover. And this little beauty is going to be our LR4 replacement, which for the past 5 years I have used for my daily driver and for towing all the other Land Rovers that don't function as well. Since we've gotten this, we haven't driven it any more than you saw in the last video, because who are we kidding? We can't be driving this thing stock. As awesome as a stock 405 Range Rover is, we went ahead and made a call to Justin over at Lucky 8. Well, I guess I'm new age. I didn't make a call, I sent an email. I mean, who wants to talk on the phone anymore? And a couple packages just showed up, which oddly enough were the first packages to ever have been delivered to the freaking car wash. I guess let me rephrase that. One of these packages was the first to ever get delivered to the car wash. These were shipped together, with this being the master tracking number, and this one's supposed to follow. This one made it to the car wash. This one, FedEx decided to just deliver to my old address without asking anyone. So the delivery saga just keeps getting stranger and stranger. But we're making progress, being something showed up. But speaking of progress, we are gonna go backwards on the Range Rover today, and we are getting rid of our 21-inch wheels. The LR4 saw quite a bit of off the parking lot excursions, and our 405 is gonna be no different. Just looking now, I'm really hoping that the wheel lock key is somewhere inside. I haven't been looking for it, but I've been kind of digging around looking at stuff and haven't came across it. That would definitely put a damper on today's activities. Well, would you look at that? Look at them smart guys putting a cutout right there for it. And it's even the right one. Today's main goal is to fit those guys on the 405, not the Callaway V8, but a set of larger, well, I guess, larger tires, smaller wheels. The 21-inch wheels that came on this guy aren't exactly the best diameter for off-road tire selection. We want to go larger, and we also want to have as much sidewall as possible, you know, so we can introduce the most amount of tire squirm possible with the 510 horsepower V8 when we barrel this guy into corners. And we're probably going to do our wheel tire upgrades in stages. I'll explain what's rattling around in my head a little bit later. This box of Land Rover parts is for other broken Land Rovers. Today, hopefully, we're just gonna need these guys. We're gonna add a little bit of height to the suspension. And thankfully, just like the LR3, LR4, it is a super simple thing to do. Just some replacement lift arms for the suspension height sensors. And no, this does not take 8 of them. For the L405 full-size Range Rover, Lucky 8 offers 3 different heights of lift via lift rods. 1 inch, 2 inch, and right in the middle at 1.5 inches. I explained to Justin what I wanted to do tire size wise, and asked him whether I should do 1.5 inch or 2 inch. And he replied, 1 inch. Not exactly the response I was expecting. I always thought size mattered. No, he said 1 inch worked on a similar setup that he had, but what we went ahead and did is get a 1 inch set and an 1.5 inch set. In the world of suspension lifts, these things are super reasonable. So having a couple of them laying around isn't gonna hurt a dang thing. If this thing was, say, a Jeep Wrangler, we'd be paying upwards of thousands of dollars to get a couple inches of lift. Instead, since this thing is so fancy, we can do it for under $100. But we are gonna trust Justin and start off with the 1 inch lift. See, DD1, DD1.5. Because really, I do wanna do the least amount of lift while still giving us the correct clearance. I don't wanna chop it all up yet. Outside of the lift rods, we are also doing a set of 30mm spacers because we are pretty much all about looks around here. But no, really, I do want our new wheel and tire setup to be a little more flush with the fender. Not only is that going to make this thing look a little more aggressive, it is also going to add a bit of protection to the bodywork. See, it is a fancy Range Rover after all. We want it to be nice, or as nice as something can be that I own. Having the wheels out further, coupled with the eventual rock sliders that we'll build, will give us some side protection. Say if we lay it up against a tree or a rock, hopefully we can rub the wheel, tire, and rock slider before the doors. I imagine the doors are expensive. And the first thing we need to do is get this guy on our fancy new lift. Told you we had tons to do with that guy. Now this is also going to give us the opportunity to shake everything down, make sure everything's tight, check everything over, and I guess also get an eye on our aluminum knuckle because supposedly these like to crack. Oh, that one wanted to jump off. Seems a lot darker on this side of the shop now that there's a car in the air. Taking a little gander up front here, it appears we are in pretty good shape on the knuckle front. I don't see the start of any cracks or anything on either side. But being this is a 2015, which is in the window of failures, I'm gonna do a little dig and see if these were ever replaced. And if not, we may go ahead and see if Land Rover will replace them, because we are gonna be putting this thing through its paces. It's not gonna be, as the Jeep guys call it, a mall crawler. It will be getting used. Now, if you haven't seen my other videos on doing the lift rods on the LR4s, it is quite possibly the simplest modification you will ever do to a vehicle. All we got to do is get this guy off. We'll dab a little WD-40, and that WD-40 makes it a little easier to slide those off the little stud. Then all we do is take our new one, and slip that guy right over. The rear one's tucked in a little bit further, but it is essentially the same process. I'm probably blocking the camera with my hand. Pop the new one on. And we're good to go. Now we just do that to the other side, and we have a lifted Range Rover. It's literally like a 15-minute job total. I didn't know Brembo made control arms. Thought they just did massive brakes. Now these work by tricking the level sensors to thinking that the vehicle is at a different height than it is. It is a very minute change, with up front being a tiny bit shorter and out back being a tiny bit longer. That just puts the level sensor in a different range. And now the computer thinks it's at the stock height, but it's actually 1 inch higher, which is 1 inch better. Now, before we put these guys on, we're gonna save ourselves some future headache and clean up the hub here. And we're gonna throw a little bit of anti-seize on the hub, and that'll keep our aluminum wheel spacer from seizing to that hub. We're in a salt state. If this went through one winter, this guy would come off with a hammer and a chisel on the backside. Otherwise, it would never come off at all. We're gonna make sure we have these guys properly torqued. That's the one scary thing about bolt-on wheel adapter spacers, is the fact that you don't get to see the lug nuts on the inside, and you also can't easily check them, and it's just one more connection point that can fail. But as long as you keep them properly torqued, there isn't a major amount of risk. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna torque these, and then in about 500 or so miles, we'll pull the wheels back off, retorque them, and then we should be good to go, and we'll just check them anytime we have the wheels off. I've yet to have one fall off or fail at that point, and if you look at like an F350 or a factory dually pickup truck, they have a bolt-on adapter up front as well, so it's not the end of the world. But we'll go around a few times just to be sure. So we got our spacers on all the way around. Now it's time for these guys. So in lieu of the factory 21-inch wheels, we went ahead and picked up a set of 20-inch alloys off a 663 Defender. Now I really ultimately want to go with 18-inch wheels on this, but for the time being, I think we are stuck with 20s, and that is because we bought the 510 horsepower supercharged V8 model, which comes with these massive 6-piston brakes up front, and I believe we need a 20-inch wheel to clear these. Or actually, should I say, the real problem is the rear brakes. Even though the caliper's not as big, the diameter and the overall diameter of the caliper is large back here. So I'm exploring what we need to do. I'm gonna try and get my hands on a few different single 18-inch wheels like Compomotives and whatnot, and do some exploratory fitment. But for phase one, we were able to pick up a set of 5-spoke Defender wheels with a 255 60/20, which is a 32-inch diameter tire versus the factory 30.7 inches. So we are picking up 1.3 inches of overall diameter. This is gonna get swapped out to hopefully a 275 60/20, which is a 33-inch diameter tire. But being the tires are good and mounted up, we're gonna get these guys on and make sure we don't have any clearance issues with the 1-inch lift. Why we also have the 1.5 inch in case. There's always trimming, and I'm fine with that. So our wheel tire setup is gonna change vastly in the next few months. Rendition 1, rendition 2 will be these with a 1-inch bigger tire. Rendition 3, we're getting 18s on this sucker. Even with our first go around, it is quite a bit meatier. We got some extra height, a tad bit more aggressive. And if you ask me, There's very few times in life you can go wrong with a classic 5-spoke wheel. Especially since we were able to pick up all 5 of these guys, yes 5, for just 650 bucks. Look at how good the tires are for just 650 bucks. I'm a sucker for a good deal. Now before we put this guy back on the ground, we need to check out the rest of the underside here. I saw pictures of it, but holy cow, is this thing clean. We don't get this type of cleanliness here in Iowa. There's not a speck of surface rust. Oh, found some. Oh, look at that. Terrible. No, this thing is frickin' clean underneath. Super happy. Should we do something with that though? That looks like it muffles stuff too much. So in typical British car fashion, it's been raining nonstop around here, but we finally got enough of a break to get a peek at this thing outside in the daylight. And I think I'm really starting to dig it. The 30mm spacers set up the wheels perfectly, front and rear, and that's gonna give us the extra body side protection that I was looking for in case we do something stupid. And with me, that seems to have a high probability of happening. It looks like we got some superficial rub on the rear liner here. And up front, of course, we're hitting the vents. But I think as of right now, with the 32-inch tires, we're just gonna roll with it. And in the back here, we have miles front and rear. So absolutely no issue there. Up front though, once we mount the 33-inch tires, we're definitely gonna have to do some trimming. And being a supercharged, we're gonna have some extra coolers and stuff up front. So stay tuned for a future video on what we gotta do to make this all happy. Now I'm really up in the air on the wheel color. I actually searched out some silver wheels because I thought with the silver side blade that would really be the ticket. But when I pulled this thing out of the shop and got my first full side view, I hated it. But the more and more I look at it and get used to it, it's starting to grow on me. Part of my problem is that we have a 5-spoke. You know how I said you can never go wrong with a 5-spoke? Well, on something full body like this, a more full face filling wheel with lots of stuff going on and not a whole lot of negative space does look pretty good. So my current thoughts are maybe we switch it up a little bit. So our hockey sticks on the side and our grill are light argent silver, but we also have dark argent silver surrounding the grill on the lower part of the bumper. The more I've been looking at this thing, I wonder if that's the move. Do we switch our side blades to this darker gray? They're this currently. And along with the side blades, we would match the wheels to that color as well, which is actually pretty close to the Compomotives that I ultimately want to end up with on this. I don't know, let me know what you guys think. Is staying silver on the blades and the wheels the right move, or do we go a little bit darker? Thinking the dark windows is kind of pointing us towards darker on the wheels. But also everything could change once we put a 33-inch tire that is a little more aggressive on there. It might beef it up enough that the silver looks right. There's not a whole lot of times in my life that I don't know what to do. And Chet really hasn't had much of an opinion either, but we're gonna have a chunkier tire, something like this Falcon or a lot of the rugged terrain stuff that's out now. That coupled with an extra inch in diameter might make this look all right the way it is. And what do you know? It's raining again. And although it was just a 1-inch lift, which in the world of lifts is pretty minuscule, but hey, an inch is an inch, and we didn't get shorted on that inch. But with something fancy like the Range Rover, I think an inch did work out well with our 32-inch tires. That is the right call with that tire size. I may just put the 1.5 inch on for fun, just to see what it does when we mount the 33-inch tires. But ultimately, I think 1 inch is the ticket. We'll eventually have a little clearancing to do, but the 1 inch works out well because one massive benefit to having a factory air ride suspension is we can just stick it in off-road mode when we need that extra clearance. Look at how much of a difference that made. So if we're actually doing some off-roading, we can always just click a button to give us what we need. And it really stuffs the tire in there in access mode. Just thinking about it too, we have 1.5 inch lift rods. We could leave the 1 inch in the rear and put the 1.5 inch up front, get a little Carolina squat going on. In access mode, we really get to see just how well the wheel and tire combo with the adapters sit in there. I don't think I could be happier with how that's sitting. Stance life, let's take a peek at our brake situation. I actually don't think the fronts are gonna be our problem. We're gonna take a scientific measurement and stick my hand in there, and we have some wiggle room on my fingers, and where we're wiggling, that finger measures 7/8 of an inch. So with my calibrated wiggle, I would say we have an inch of clearance. The correct wheel means an 18 would fit while touching. We want to go 2 inches down in size, but being that is overall diameter, the clearance itself is only going to shrink an inch. So I think with the right wheel, possibility of 18s is alive up front. Now the rear is a different story, although not hugely different. We have a much smaller caliper, but that caliper hangs closer to the wheel. By my calibrated finger and its wiggle room, we have about 3/4 of an inch out back. So honestly, I think the only way to get 18s on this guy is to swap the rear brakes over to the 3-liter V6 supercharged setup I believe they're smaller. I'm going to confirm that. If you know, let me know, because someone just telling me is easier than me digging around. Here's a pretty good side-by-side comparison. The LR4 has a 32-inch tall tire, 2 inches of lift. Same size tire over here, but only 1 inch of lift. I'm actually impressed with how tall the 405 is sitting next to the LR4. The LR4 by nature is a very tall vehicle. The lift and larger tires does kind of grow the 405 up some. Makes it look pretty nice. Now the LR4 has done some impressive stuff. Can't wait to see how this guy hangs in comparison. I also can't wait to make it a little more self-sufficient like the LR4 is. But either way, I really think this guy is starting to look the part. And with the lift, the spacers, and the wheels, we literally have only spent $1,000 to, in my opinion, massively upgrade our 405. Can't wait to take this thing out and do some mall crawling. But before that, we need to test out its true capabilities. We still have to pick up the greatest Land Rover ever made, because we left it in Ohio. I think trailering that guy home might be a good first drive. There's not many things cooler than Land Rovers towing Land Rovers, especially when you got massaging seats. Appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and this is just the tip of the iceberg on the 405. We got a lot of things planned for this guy. The next video, hopefully we have some of that equipment on the fab side hooked up so we can start rolling with some upgrades around here. You know, after staring at it for a little bit longer, I think I figured out why the wheels look a little goofy to me. Just makes it look a little more poverty spec Range Rover, which I guess for me is probably pretty fitting.